Nobody wants to be told that they're narrow-minded, mean-spirited, or rigidly pessimistic. Everybody, I think, wants to be told, oh yes, you are broad-minded, big-hearted, and irrepressibly optimistic, even when we're not. And so here is the address for today on those very words. I start with this solemn reality. We're not always broad-minded, big-hearted, irrepressibly optimistic. With a little reflection, we soon will realize how often we fall short in various areas of life. If I asked you, how does your religion help you live your life? What would you say? Maybe if I pressed you a little bit, you'd say, well, there's Moses. Yes, he gave us the 10 Commandments, didn't he? They're all a bit negative, as you've heard me say before. If you want to live a good life, you will not do that, you should not do that, and you must not do that. That's pretty negative. So you might say, well, we'll put that over there for the moment, and we'll turn to a second source, the Psalms. Today I read you my version of Psalm 135, which commends us to follow the good, the true, and the beautiful. What words? The good, the true, and the beautiful. Or you might then turn to the words of Jesus of Nazareth. Reluctant as we are in public to do this, but then at one point he said, let there be no limit to your goodness. And at that point we close the book, because we have many limits to our goodness. Nevertheless, those words take us very close to these words of my address today. They're words on the back of your order of service paper, an obituary to a man I knew but vaguely. And these words were placed in the professional journal about him. The writer was described as a man who, over 92 years of his life, exemplified those very words: broad-minded, big-hearted, irrepressibly optimistic. And there they are, and I added a couple of words at the bottom to say, what an obituary. Those words. I really meant to say, what a life. What a life. Some of the vital ingredients in friendship embodies those words. We're drawn to people who are broad-minded, big-hearted, high on optimism, whereas we're likely to be less engaged with people who are not so much, who are mean-spirited, lacking in generosity, too often pessimistic. In so many situations, we easily succumb to the narrow-minded position, though we'd use other words. We easily succumb to being mean-spirited, having a closed heart, though we would use other words. We easily become invaded by a pessimistic view of things, though we'd use other words. We don't like those words. We see ourselves in a different light. What kind of a human being do you want to become? Do you want to be? What kind of human being are you? Probably some, maybe all, will say, well, I want to be a fully functioning, fully flourishing human being. That's a good objective. We're often aware, however, of hidden factors in ourselves that limit our functioning and limit our flourishing. And it will effectively ensure that we'll be less of a human being than we'd first aimed to be, fully functioning, fully flourishing. Similarly, in our relationships, We might hope to be flourishing in our relationships with people and with the world. And yet so many things occur, things we don't understand, often things we can't even identify because somehow they're buried in the hidden parts of our mind, and they lead us to be less flourishing and less than what we hoped we might have been. I think many people, without knowing it, without being aware of it, close their minds, stop listening to themselves, start believing things about themselves in the narrower sense, but they wouldn't use those words. Many people become downcast in their view of the world, in their way of relating to people, in their beliefs about people, and no longer hear the call to be part of a different world, a bigger world. Many people settle for that protective kind of existence, that harsher view of the world, knowing that people are different and you've got to watch what you're doing in relation to them. People who do not fit into our world. No, so we don't want to listen to them. Indeed, we don't want to listen to the words of our own faith, which says, remember this, you are accepted, and so are they. You're all part of one family of God, and we ought not to forget it. Don't forget it, as the music said today, don't forget it. We're all part of the family of God. How difficult it is in countries around the world, in our relationships right here at home. How do we embrace and sustain a broad-mindedness, a big-heartedness, a flow of optimism that refuses to be repressed? You'll be aware of these words run in stark opposition to some expressions of our religion, of religions of different persuasions. They run in stark opposition to many political views, many political parties. But again, those people, both in religion and in politics, are quick to assure us that they're not bigoted, they are not ungenerous, not pessimistic. They're doing things for the whole world. You see, so much depends on the specific situation, the specific context, our preconceptions, the philosophy from which we are arguing. So much depends on your worldview, and it's difficult to see what that worldview is at times. You'll notice that rarely is anything said when people are laying out their beliefs about this or that. Rarely is anything said about the influence of religion on their lives. Isn't that curious? When religion plays a part in most, if not all, societies. So even though there may be an unspoken influence there, the person holds a very highly defended view on so many things. They're against birth control, they're against abortion, they're against women's rights, they're against people of colour, they're against euthanasia, against. And they never stop. Perhaps they don't stop, at least in public utterance. They don't say, where do they get these views from? Upon what do they base their stance? On all of these issues and many more, religion has been sidelined, often regarded as really quite irrelevant. So instead of deductively claiming a priority position for religion, we have to do some fairly basic reconstruction inductively to find a supportive role for religion. So much has it been kicked to the sidelines. Now, is it of any value? Does it have any supportive value for us? Generally speaking, we're looking for the broad-minded, big-hearted, optimistic person. Now, in looking for that person, it's curious, isn't it, that we would not automatically turn to the churches to find that person. And we would not think of immediately finding that person amongst the politicians around the world. Although there are some, of course, don't misunderstand me, but generally speaking. So if these qualities are worthy qualities, where will we find them? And are they worth sustaining? So I'm going to put to you 4 or 5 possibilities. At a very basic, first of all, at a very basic level, we all need a model. And we all have a model, even though we might not articulate what that model is. We do need a model that gives some substance, some direction to the way we will live, to the viewpoints we'll hold. What is your model? I'm going to call that M1. We all need also a motivation. We need motivation to lift us from where we've been, where we are, to what we'd like to be, to what we possibly can be. M2, motivation. But we all need a third M. We can have some kind of model. We know we need some kind of motivation to move us from where we once were to what we might like to be. But the third M helps us to make that move. It is the M of meaning. If your goal has no meaning for you and for others, does not give a meaningful enhancement to your identity, to your life, then you'll quickly let it drop and it will fall by the wayside. But there, for my first look at this topic today, I'm putting to you those 3 M's: the model, the motivation, and the meaning that you put into things. To the second issue. Edward de Bono some time ago gave us a 4th M. The person we're looking for, broad-minded, big-hearted, and optimistic. These attributes require a beautiful mind. A beautiful mind. The beauty of your mind, wrote de Bono, shows in your conversations, shows in what you say, shows in your viewpoints, shows in the way you express your philosophy. Just as people, he said, can look at your physical beauty, they can listen to the beauty of your mind in the words you use. It is not about intelligence, he said. It is not about your knowledge. It is how you use your mind. And we see the way you use your mind in your conversations. A beautiful mind. A 4th M. I go to the 3rd issue. In many places and with many people, religion has become a closed business. There it is. Religion, its creeds, its customs, its concepts, and who's interested in them? And are they relevant anyway? Probably not. They're all there, but deeply buried within your religion was what gave it its vitality and its excitement. And what was that? It was imagination. So many people within religion have lost the great gift of imagination. Imagination. The Psalms are astonishing expressions of imagination, and we read one of them today. It is something that, imagination is something that is widely neglected. Neglected in the areas of education, would you believe it? As we put people in their boxes and say, you must learn this and learn it our way and regurgitate it on the examinations the way we gave it to you all the time. Where is the imagination? Will we not approve it? Will we not affirm it? Will we not develop it? Imagination has almost been totally neglected in theological studies. I doubt if it's ever mentioned. And also in psychological research and practice. The new faith, if you let it break through, places high premium, high value on the development, on the place of, on the role of imagination. I've recently been reading the story of the 16th century artist El Greco. This year in the city of Toledo, his paintings and icons will be gathered together from 28 countries. He was once widely despised and discarded. There is now a discovery of his astonishing imagination. Ingrid Rowland wrote of El Greco, "Here was a man He spent the first half of his life in Crete and could never erase from his memory the sun-saturated colours of the Greek islands, the aquamarine of the Aegean waters, the incandescent yellow of the wild daisies that carpeted the fields of Crete in early summer, and the ravishing, delicate violet of the anemones that scattered across the country. He had a great style of handling his paints, bringing a brilliant imagination that conveyed to 4 subsequent centuries what could happen with a bit of paint. The majestic scale of the city churches received his majestic response from this man with a brush, gave wild exuberance and airborne lightness of his painted visions, and surrounded them with the warmth, the warm golden glow of his gilded frames, fashioned by his own hands. Here he was, from the large scale of the churches and the cathedrals, right down to the bold slashes of paint that would imitate falling raindrops. The imagination of El Greco. So much for El Greco in his time. Our task is to identify in our time the broad-minded, big-hearted, irrepressibly optimistic person and the imagination that goes with it. So to my 4th point, I'm going to turn to Kay Redfield Jamison's book, which he entitled Exuberance. I've mentioned it here once or twice before. She said, Exuberance is an abounding, ebullient, effervescent emotion. It is kinetic and unrestrained. It is joyful and irrepressible. Right at its core, it is restless, it is billowing. Certainly, it is no lulling sense of contentment. It's alive. Exuberant people take in the world and act upon it differently from those who are less lively and less energetically engaged. Their love of life and adventure, she says, is palpable. To keep exuberance alive, we do need to keep it alive, because so often it can just fall by the wayside like so much else. To keep exuberance alive is to keep alive the possibilities of imagination and play, her words. So the people the world needs, the world urgently needs, broad-minded, big-hearted, irrepressibly optimistic. We need to say it over and over again. They know the 3 M's. Did you get them? They need a model. What is the model? They need some motivation to lift them from where they are to what they might be. And they need to get that essential meaning, that lively meaning. That was number 1. They need a beautiful mind. Broad-hearted, broad-minded, big-hearted, optimistic. They need a beautiful mind. They need to develop imagination. And they need to keep exuberance alive. I come to the 5th issue. The real test for everyone and for every nation is how we treat each other, how we treat our own species, fellow human beings, whether they're called refugees or asylum seekers, whether they are political prisoners or prisoners in our jails, whether they are the person who has nothing or the person who has great wealth, the person who has less in an unequal society, people in need or people of great affluence. The challenge is for all of us to create a larger worldview, because the tendency is to constrict our worldview. We need a worldview that is broad-minded, big-hearted, and that will display to all the practical manifestations of people who are, in fact, irrepressibly optimistic. There are plenty of reminders of how helpless we are to bring changes to the world, except each one of us could be more friendly, more open-hearted advocates of a larger worldview. The larger worldview is to translate into a reality the revolution of awareness and concern. A revolution of awareness and concern. The larger worldview, in biblical language, said, you who were once not part of the family of God are now part of the family of God. Of course, there is difficulty with that, because we don't want certain people to be part of the family. In fact, in my many F's, my paradigm of 28 F's I've got through these days, F21 talks about the fences that we construct. We construct fences to keep people out and to keep some people in. And of course we need fences. But the fences we construct can mean we have ceased to be broad-minded, big-hearted, and we become lost in our fear and pessimism. A new faith is needed. Our new faith keeps asking the question, how will we now live? What kind of people will we now be? The world has an ample supply of people who are narrow-minded, mean-spirited, and bigoted pessimists. We need to create environments that will encourage people to be more broad-minded, more big-hearted, more on the side of being irrepressibly. Did you hear that word? Irrepressibly optimistic. And make sure that we ourselves are amongst them. Would you please stand? Would you say with me the prayer of faith? Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.